Good morning. Um, my name's Aishah Shahidah Simmons, and I'm a visiting member of Community Insight. And I am based on the unceded lands of the Anacostan, Piscataway, and Pamunkey indigenous nations known as Washington, D.C. And going to begin with a meditation followed by um, a pause for either writing or movement meditation or bathroom break, and then coming back for a talk on Karuna, compassion in times of despair. So I'd like to invite all of you to please find a position, either if you're seated or lying down, if you're at home, where you are relaxed and simultaneously alert. If you're comfortable, I invite you to either close your eyes or lower the gaze or create a soft gaze, inviting yourself to tune inward and inviting you to arrive, body and mind. And one way to do that, one of many ways, is connecting with your breath. The in breath and the out breath. And feel that either through your abdomen rising and falling, or your chest rising and falling, or the sensations below the nostril, above the upper lip. So just connecting with your breath. And while staying connected to your breath, explore if you can tune into your body sensations, feeling the earth beneath you, through your feet on the floor if you're seated in a chair, or even if you're seated in a chair, your sits bones in that chair and that chair connected to the earth. But just feeling the sensations in your body while staying connected to your breath. You may begin or want to begin from the soles of your feet and moving up through your legs and your sits bones, your abdomen, chest, arms, hands, neck, head, and as we are breathing in from the soles of our feet to the top of our heads, the inhale and then exhaling. But as we come up, just allowing all that is above us. Most of us are indoors, so there's a ceiling above us, but even above the ceiling, just the sky, the universe, holding all that is mysterious. Inviting us to turn towards curiosity and beginner's mind, letting go of judgment, comparison, and fixing. I want to invite a compassion practice that I've been practicing as of late. And as with all of the Brahma Vihara practices, we begin with ourselves and then work outward. So I will offer phrases and invite you, if you are inclined or moved, to repeat those phrases to yourself. And then if not, feel free to just continue focusing on breath and body sensations. I care about my suffering. I care for me. I care about my suffering. I care for me. May I be free from all my pain. May I be peaceful. May I be free from all of my pain. May I be peaceful. I care about your suffering. I care for you. I care about your suffering. I care for you. May you be free from all of your pain and suffering. May you be peaceful. May you be free from all of your pain and suffering. May you be peaceful. I care about their suffering. I care for them. I care about their suffering. I care for them. May they be free from all of their pain and suffering. May they be peaceful. May they be free from all of their pain and suffering. May they be peaceful. And for all beings everywhere without exception, remembering that we are amongst one of the beings, I care for our suffering. I care for us. I care for our suffering. I care for us. May we be free of all our pain and suffering. May we be peaceful. May we be free from all of our pain and suffering. May we be peaceful. Staying connected to the breath, widening our heart mind. As the mind wanders, just gently, compassionately bring it back to this moment, to the breath, body sensation, to the heart mind. We are interconnected. We are interdependent. We are held together by the universe, by Earth, by each other. Thank you. For these next 10 or 11 minutes, we'll come back at 20 after the hour, wherever the hour is, inviting you to either continue practicing silently or doing movement meditation or journaling, or if you need to hydrate, take a bathroom break, please do. And I will come back 20 after the hour to talk about Karuna, compassion. So I feel really emotional. I want to just be very transparent about that. Very emotional. And earlier this week, when I was planning, I knew I was going to talk today, give it, lead the sit and talk today. I've known this for months, but um, last week, actually, I was away and I knew that this talk was coming, and at the beginning of last week, I should say, like October 2nd, I said, oh, I want to talk about mudita. I want to talk about appreciative joy. And and I kept holding on to thinking about wanting to talk about that, and even had shared that that's what I was going to talk about at the beginning of this week. But something wouldn't, and I think that we can always talk about and need to talk about mudita. Let me be very clear. Um, but I was also aware of feelings of despair, and that I kept trying to override. And and I realized that I would not even be able to be my authentic self talking about mudita today, which is why I changed the topic to talk about compassion. Um, and I'm really glad, because in preparing for this talk today, I had the opportunity to really revisit um, text, Pali text, Mahayana, Mahayana text around compassion, and and reinvigorate my practices um, around compassion. So, as always, I want to open with some words that are not mine. The first is a quote: "Where life is precious, life is precious," by Dr. Ruthie Wilson Gilmore, a 1772-year-old humanitarian and prison abolitionist. These 7 words, writes Amelia Abraham in review of Ruthie's new book, Abolition Geography: Essays Towards Liberation, are a blueprint for a more humanitarian way of doing things. Where life is precious, life is precious. The next is a quote from Osho Zenju Earthling Manual, Zen elder priest, author of many books, including most recently Opening to Darkness, 8 Gateways for Being with the Absence of Light. I believe that I have shared excerpts of this quote in previous talks this year. She writes, quote, "What if darkness terrorizes us so that we run from it rather than go deeper into it? How can we bear dark times, or more explicitly horrifying times, with the skill of an awakened one? Misery, struggle, and sorrow are not the sole intentions of this life. Yet we can respect our interrelationship with everything in the world, including the suffering in, around, and between us. Is there a way to live in unsettling times that we have forgotten?" Close quote. I feel like the world is on fire in the midst of a drought. History reminds me that while this time period feels different, it's not unique in terms of the horrors that we are both aware and even unaware that have happened for millennia, that are happening right now. 1 week ago today, Hamas's murder of more than 1,300 Israelis, with an additional 3,200 wounded, along with the hostages. This week, Israel's murder, Palestinians killing at least 2,200 people, with an additional 8,700 in Gaza. And as of this morning, there are no calls for ceasefire or de-escalation. In the halls of U.S. government, we are in an uncharted territory without a House Speaker. A role, according to the U.S. Constitution, is required, all of which means the House of Representatives is essentially immobilized until it can settle on a new speaker. The people of Myanmar, a country whose centuries-old Buddhist practices are foundational to Western Theravadan Buddhism, have been living under a dictatorship since the military coup ousted the democratically elected officials in February 2021. There's hardly any coverage, any mention, including in our own Buddhist circles. A series of deadly earthquakes in Afghanistan have less than estimated 1,000 deaths and steadily climbing. And I'm just talking about this week. In September, which is not long ago, in the Marrakesh Safi region in Morocco, approximately 3,000 deaths were reported. We know about the wildfires in Hawaii, predominantly in the town of Lahaina on Maui's northwest coast, where 90 deaths and more than 20 missing. Presently, Hurricane Lydia is tearing up the Pacific coast of Mexico. The Indian authorities have charged the renowned novelist Arundhati Roy over public comments she made 13 years ago about Kashmir. September 29th, Stephen Perkins, an African-American man, was murdered by the police in front of his wife and daughter, outside of his home, because his truck was being repossessed, though he was not in default of payment. And the person who came to repossess the truck came with police officers, and they gunned him down. And even if he hadn't paid his payments, is his life more valuable than the truck? And this is just a few of so many things happening in the world, in terms of the planet, in terms of nation states. It's so much. If there were ever a time to cultivate compassion, it would be all of the time. Often in mindfulness, we are taught to observe things as objectively as possible so that we can actually see and feel what's really happening. It's almost a detached perspective that enables us to respond and not react. But with the Brahma Viharas, or heart practices known as metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, mudita, appreciative joy, and upekkha, equanimity, it's a little different. Yes, they're still moving with a sense of detachment, as in not expecting anything in return. However, we are tuned to our feelings of love in its purest sense. As I shared, I think in June, maybe, when I gave a talk on the Brahma Viharas, that they each represent the different flavors of our citta, which in Buddhism is the heart mind. So it's the heart mind connected, the citta. They support our keeping love in its purest, non attached sense with anyone we meet or situation we face, no matter how challenging. Karuna, the Pali word, or compassion, is the heart mind that responds. It is, as Dharma teacher Darrell Williams shares, a trembling, quivering, or moving of the heart in response to one's suffering, including our own. When we recognize, are open to, and acknowledge that pain and sorrow exist everywhere without exception. Suffering can be intense, it can be quiet or refined. It is a thread that needs to be recognized and is a common connection through all beings, including those we may dislike vehemently, those who cause unspeakable forms of harm. I don't share this to condone any form of harm, regardless of how minute or large. Harm is harm is harm is harm. I share it as an acknowledgement that at one point or another, and often multiple continuous points, we all suffer and we are all in need of compassion. And sometimes, and a lot of times, that compassion comes with accountability. Again, compassion reminds us that everyone suffers. There isn't one person who hasn't suffered at one point or another in their lives. And based on this, do we really want some person, including someone whom we don't like, to experience more suffering? What would such a wish mean in terms of what we truly value in our hearts and minds? Calling on Ruthie Wilson Gilmore's words, where life is precious, life is precious. Compassion is not pity. When we pity someone, we are often judging their situation in a way that makes ourselves the savior in juxtaposition to them being the victim. Pity is a near enemy of compassion. Compassion and empathy are connected, but they are not the same. Empathy means you identify with someone's feeling and may even join in their suffering. Compassion, however, ignites you to take action and respond after you've paused, after you softened, after you discern, so that you respond without causing harm or causing the least amount of harm possible. Empathy precedes compassion. Empathy without compassion leaves the individual drained of energy as a result of feeling what the other feels. Empathy occurs immediately and leaves no emotional room between the individual and the one who is suffering. Compassion, however, is more cognitive in nature. In the Pali Canon, the primary text for those practicing Theravada Buddhism, Karuna and Metta are not the same. Yes, they are intricately related. Karuna is the desire to remove harm and suffering from others, and Metta is the desire to cultivate well being and happiness of others. The Buddha, it is said, has chosen, to teach the teachings that we practice out of compassion for all beings, out of the desire to remove harm and suffering from others. And of course, it is interrelated and interconnected to cultivating well being and happiness of others. In the Mahayana Buddhist world, Avalokitesvara or Kuan Yin is a bodhisattva who embodies Karuna. In the intermediate section of the stages of meditation by Kamalasila, an 8th century Indian Buddhist, he wrote, moved by compassion, Karuna, bodhisattvas take the vow to liberate all sentient beings. Then, by overcoming their self centered outlook, they engage eagerly and continuously in the very difficult practices of accumulating merit and insight. Having entered into this practice, they will certainly complete the collection of merit and insight. Accomplishing the accumulation of merit and insight is like having omniscience itself in the palm of your hand. Therefore, since compassion is the only root of omniscience, you should become familiar with this practice from the very beginning. Many of us have seen images or even have images of Kuan Yin um, on altars or in our spaces. I know at Insight Meditation Society and Spirit Rock that there are big statues of Kuan Yin. In the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, an authoritative 8th century Tibetan Buddhist text by Shantideva, He wrote the following about meditation on Karuna. Strive at first to meditate upon the sameness of yourself and others. In joy and sorrow, all are equal. Thus, be guardian of all as of yourself. The hand and other limbs are many and distinct, but all are one. The body to be kept and guarded. Likewise, different beings in their joys and sorrows are like me, all one in wanting happiness. This pain of mine does not afflict or cause discomfort to another's bodies, and yet this pain is hard for me to bear because I cling and take it for my own. And other beings' pain I do not feel, and yet because I take them for myself, their suffering is mine and therefore hard to bear. And therefore I'll dispel the pain of others, for it is simply pain just like mine. And others I will aid and benefit, for they are living beings like my body. Since I and other beings both, in wanting happiness, are equal in the like, what difference is there to distinguish us that I should strive to have my bliss alone? Close quote. Compassion is a potent and nurturing force that supports our not turning away from suffering. It calls upon us to not only see, to not only witness, but to embody the interdependence that we all share with each other as humans, with each other as beings on this planet, that we share with the trees, with the grass, with the land, with the oceans, with the whales, with the fish, that we all share. Where life is precious, life is precious. It's important to cultivate compassion for ourselves because if we don't, we can't cultivate it for others. So, this is not about not focusing on our suffering. It is focusing on our suffering and focusing on the suffering of others. You can't give water from an empty well. As Dharma teacher Terari Sala states, it is vital that we cultivate the inner strength and resilience to steady ourselves in the face of the instability of life. An essential part of developing resilience is strengthening positive qualities in our hearts and minds. Where life is precious, life is precious. In her book, Mindful of Race, Transforming Racism from the Inside Out, Dharma teacher Ruth King writes, life can feel unbearable if we are afraid of getting our hearts broken again and again. From the pervasiveness and pressures of racial, and I would add gender, I would add physical ability, sexuality, religion, politics, racial ignorance and distress. However, when we maintain a consistent compassion practice, we discover that although the ego can't hold both hate and love at the same time, the wise heart mind can. Compassion practice is a way to awaken the benevolence that is inherent in all of us, no matter how cruel or cold the world appears to be or is. To be mindful of race, and I would add to be mindful of all forms of indifference, is to touch into the terror of fear, vulnerability, and how we feel when we can't control others or control what is happening in the moment. But we also touch so much more, including our deep wish for safety, happiness, and freedom for all beings. And during our morning meditation practice, I led a compassion practice that um, learned from in Plum Village, practiced by taught by Thich Nhat Hanh and practiced by many, and it has surpassed Plum Village. And I just want to offer another practice coming out of Ruth King's book. If you have not read Mindful of Race, Transforming Racism from the Inside Out, I really encourage you to read it. I think that I mean, she wrote it in, thinking initially around race in the United States. And I think it is applicable to so much, and she brings in so much. And so, in a very extended section on compassion, where she starts, of course, with ourselves and extends outwards, she offers a compassion practice for all that I just feel called to invite us to practice. Part of the closing of the talk, I just think that we need practices, we need somatic experiences for these times to help us to discern, to help us to soften, to help us to move, to take action how we believe is the best way to take action that causes the least amount of harm possible. So I invite you to breathe in and allow yourself to be touched by the racial, gender, religious, physical abilities, sexual, political suffering in our families, communities, nations, the world, and the planet. Just breathing in and feeling the heat and the darkness and the heaviness and the sadness and the hopelessness and the despair and fear or whatever else is present as you allow this suffering to be known, is suffering that we all share, perhaps in different ways and at different times, but we're all sharing it. Just breathing it in and then breathing out coolness, brightness, and lightness, a sense of freshness and well being. As you silently repeat the following phrases, offering your sincere wish for the relief of the world's suffering, the entire world. I care about your suffering. May all sentient beings be soothed and healed. I am sorry you have been harmed, exploited, ignored, and hated. I care about your suffering. May all sentient beings be safe from inner and outer danger. I may not know how to show that I care, but I am doing what I can to make a difference. May all sadness, pain, and sorrow be erased. I hold all beings without exception in compassion. May all beings be free from fear. May all beings feel my care and meet racial, gender, sexual, physical ability, religious, political difficulties with courage and kindness. May all beings be free from pain and sorrow. May all beings be free from suffering caused by racial differences, political differences, religious differences, gender identity differences, sexual orientation differences, physical ability differences. May all be free. May suffering be a great teacher for the eradication of suffering. May all beings be soothed and be healed. Breathe in for all of us. Breathe out for all of us. Breathe in the suffering so that all sentient beings can be well and have the space, the right to relax, to be, to open, to heal. Breathing out, feel the qualities of compassion being released through all of your pores and out into the world for the benefit of all sentient beings without any exception. We are interconnected. We are interdependent. We all share one home, and that home is Earth. Breathing in and breathing out. where life is precious. Life is precious. Thank you.